Welcome to Expats Everywhere. Can you tell us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself?
My name is Hannah. I'm originally from Canada, and so my background, I grew up in Canada, and then when I was about 10 years old, I moved to the Philippines. Spent almost 15 years there. Did my university back in the States, and then went back and taught at a school there in the Philippines.
Okay, what was it like working in the Philippines?
Working in the Philippines, I really enjoyed my time there. I taught there for about 2.5 years. The Philippines is amazing. The people there are so nice and generous. If ever you have any questions, they're always willing to help. You can get around fairly easily using just English. That's the second primary language that they use there. I worked in the main city of Manila, so there's a lot of buildings, a lot of malls, access to a lot of different things, especially compared to some of the provincial areas.
Okay, what kind of jobs are available there for expats?
Primarily, the expats there will work in banking companies or teachers. Working in the Philippines, there's very few opportunities for jobs just because, especially in Manila, it's a very crowded area. So primarily expats, they'll work with their businesses that send them, or they'll be teachers. But beyond that, there's not a lot of job opportunities.
Okay, so as a teacher, what did a typical day look like for you?
So the school I worked at was an international school. We worked with locals as well as international students. So typically in the Philippines, everything starts earlier. We'd wake up and get to school by 6 to start the school day at 7:15. The school day where we were was up in a subdivision, so it's separate from the city. Very beautiful view. So we had a quieter area, very green. Went through the typical school day. After school, we had activities. There's soccer, there's volleyball, lots of sports opportunities. We would go around, play other international schools as well as local schools, and then be at home by 5:30 and in bed early for the next day.
Did you have a mix of ethnicities at your international school?
So our primary ethnicity was Korean. They made over 50% of our school. Then we had American, and then Filipino was our third primary population that we had, and then the rest were a mix. We had many different nationalities, over 30 different nationalities represented in our school.
As a teacher, about how much can someone expect to earn?
So a typical salary for the locals in the Philippines is about $11,000. It's very low salary. For most teachers, though, depending on where you work, you'll make about 25 to 30,000 American dollars.
And is that enough to live on?
25 to 30,000 is you can live very comfortably with that type of a salary. Yeah.
So what kind of lifestyle would that give you?
With that range, you could live in a house. Most houses will go to from $800 to $1,000 a month in rent, and that's a full-size house. If you're a single moving there, you could share that, and that would be split between however many bedrooms you have. Lifestyle, you can eat out pretty comfortably. There's a wide variety of food prices. Some of the local restaurants that you'll find, you can spend $2 to $3 on a meal, but if you go to some of the nicer restaurants, it'll be $7 to $8. That would be about what you would spend.
And would someone be able to save with that salary?
With that salary, you could easily save. If you consistently eat more in the local range of prices, and then even groceries are quite cheap, you could easily save and live comfortably.
Okay, so if someone gets a job and they're moving there, how much money should they bring with them to start up?
So typically, if you're going to move to the Philippines, you'll want to purchase a car. That's the best way to get around with transportation. And then with rent, they typically require 3 months rent initially. So ideally, you'd want about $4,000 to $5,000, and that would keep you at the level where you could rent a house as well as buy a car and any of the startup costs. Depending on where you move to, there's some that would already have the furniture there, but you might also have to buy your own, which that can be another couple $100 depending on where you're shopping.
And how should someone pack? What's the weather like?
The weather is very hot. You have hot and then you have rainy. So you don't need any sweaters, you don't need your winter jackets. Really, primarily what you'll wear is shorts, t-shirts, capris, and some lighter pants. You don't want anything that's heavy. You won't use it if you're there. So you can pack pretty light if you're moving to the Philippines. You might bring one lighter sweater and maybe a rain jacket. But typically, even with the rain, what will happen is it'll pour and then it will stop. So even to have a rain jacket, you won't need it for that long.
Is there anything that someone should bring that they can't find there?
Yes, there's a lot of things you can't find. If you want some American items, you'll have to pay a lot more. So I would recommend, for example, something like chia seeds or flax seeds. If you like to have that, you should buy that in the States. Any of those those exported things that you might really like, peanut butter. A lot of times we had friends bring over peanut butter, big jars, because it's quite expensive there in the Philippines. If you eat the local food there, then I mean, you don't really need to bring anything, but some products that you might use, makeup, if there's toiletries that you like, some certain type of deodorant. You oftentimes probably can't find it there in the Philippines, so I would recommend bringing those things as well.
Okay, how safe is it in Manila and in the Philippines in general?
So in the Philippines, you don't ever want to travel on your own, and that's especially if you're a girl, but even as a guy, if you're traveling there, you always have what they call a kasama. So it's somebody that will go with you. You don't want to be alone. And that's just kind of more of a cultural thing as well. If they see someone traveling alone, it's not very typical, and they don't recommend that. If you are traveling out more into the province, then you want to make sure you have a guy with you. You don't want to travel as two single women, especially if it's an area that you haven't been to before. Down south, especially, if you like hiking, if you like backpacking, then you should definitely have a guy with you as you're traveling, and I would travel with at least 3 people. When you're there, you want to make sure that you know where your stuff is. So I would never leave anything on a table. You want to make sure your backpack it's in front of you, just because it's very common to get pickpocketed there in the Philippines, especially around November, December, as it's getting closer to Christmas. People want to buy gifts, so they tend to pickpocket a bit more, just so that they can buy gifts for their family. It's more just because the poverty level is so high that you do have to be careful. They won't necessarily hurt you. They're desperate and they need money. So you need to be smart. There's certain areas that you don't want to go at night. You don't want to go when it's dark, and you definitely don't really ever want to travel by yourself.
Great advice. Okay, changing gears, how can you meet people there?
So depending on what your job is, you'll want to build into your local community as much as possible. But for me as a teacher, I spent a lot of time at my school. I was coaching as well, so most weekends that was also where I would be. So meeting people, it depends on what your job is. More than likely, you'll find people at your work, more so than maybe outside of your work. The Filipino people are some of the nicest people that you'll ever meet, though. So if you go to someone, they're very likely to offer you to come in to eat a meal with them. Even if you go into some of the squatter communities, they'll still want to at least provide you a drink, and they love to just sit and talk. They're a very relaxed society.
All right, what kinds of things can you do for fun?
So, lots of fun things. I definitely recommend the beach. There's so many gorgeous beaches within the Philippines. It's really gorgeous area. Palawan, the island of Palawan, they have lots of really untouched areas that you can go, and it's not too busy. There's also hiking that's been growing, in fact, in the last couple of years, just as the middle class has been growing in the Philippines. They've started to open up more opportunities for hiking. So if you do enjoy outdoors, you enjoy hiking around, camping, there are opportunities for that as well. But the primary thing that people will do is go to the beach.
What's the healthcare like, and would you feel comfortable getting a procedure done there?
So actually, the healthcare is quite good there. Quite a bit cheaper than what you'll find anywhere else, but the quality is pretty good depending on where you go. There's three primary hospitals that are the safest and the most well known. I have had procedures done there. Some people will even, because of how cheap it is, they'll go there for their dental work. So it's, in fact, if you're getting a big dental procedure, it could be cheaper to travel to the Philippines, get the procedure done, and travel back than it would be to have that procedure done in the States. And it's quite good. If you go to a local hospital, I don't recommend. It's not as safe, and it's also not as clean. A lot of the people who can't afford, they will end up in the local hospital, and it's very crowded. They try and take care of the people there, but it's just overcrowded and quite dirty. St. Luke's and Medical City, those are two ones that definitely a lot of expats go to.
Do you think that the Philippines is a good travel hub?
It is, especially with the area that it's in. It is an island, so if you can't just drive to go somewhere to a different country, but it's easy enough, and where it's located, you can get fairly good tickets. Their airport is definitely not one of the nicest airports, but they've just opened a new one within the last couple of years, and so it's opened up different airlines to be able to come in, and that then allows for cheaper flights to Japan, Korea, those areas. It's quite easy, 4 or 5 hours. Malaysia, even Singapore, all those areas. It doesn't take too long, and you can travel from there.
All right, lastly, what are some pros and cons about living in the Philippines?
So, pros, the people there, they're some of the nicest people that you'll ever meet. They're very relaxed. They love community. Their family is their first priority, and so they're very loving and open to new people, especially Americans. They love Americans there. But just the people there are what make it so great. You can walk along the road and people will say hi to you, and if ever you have questions, they're always willing to help out, and they'll go the extra mile for you. Also, the cost of living is very low, so that's another benefit, especially if you are earning a pretty good amount. You can save, you can live comfortably, and there are opportunities to live in nicer areas as well. Some negatives, just safety for sure. This is not a place that you can go around by yourself. If you are an independent person, then it can be hard to move there because you have to be reliant on other people. And then really it's hard because of the poverty that you see. No matter where you go, there's poverty all around you, and so it can be heavy if you feel that and you see that all the time, because sometimes you just can't solve those problems, and you see them every day. But the people are what make it worth it, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for telling us about the Philippines today.
Thank you.